In 2018, Hurricane Michael swept over Florida and left thousands of people homeless. Alex, who lives in the Florida Panhandle, thought her family of 5 was relatively well prepared for the storm, assuming the news likely hyped up the warning. In just 24 hours, life looked completely different. The flooding subsided in a matter of hours, but the damage to her neighborhood and home would take years to recover from the Category 5 storm. In days during recovery, Alex struggled to find supplies she needed in town, unsure who could help her get refills for her husband's prescriptions. It was difficult to know which rumors to believe, with no single source of information. Volunteer organizations showed up with mops and cleaning supplies, but her house was in shambles. No one was listening to what her family actually needed. This wasn't the first time she felt that the response was misaligned. She's lived in Florida her entire life, and preparation and recovery haven't adapted to her community's needs over time.
The reality is that the state of Florida has had over 75 tropical weather events in the last 20 years. When we look at the bigger picture, with implications of climate change and globalization, we will be increasingly impacted by more devastating crises in the future. That's why our team, the Shapers, an international group of designers, strategists, and problem solvers, came together to address a tough question. How might we provide immediate relief for those impacted by natural disasters? Alex is just one example of the many stories we heard over the past 5 weeks. But we found that her feelings of uncertainty, fear, and frustration were universal. We spoke to survivors, experts, and volunteers who collectively have experienced a variety of disasters around the world. We walked away from many of those stories speechless and overwhelmed.
We felt ignored by the country.
I felt like I was playing a bad zombie video game because I didn't know what was going on around me.
You have to know what people on the ground need. You might think they need boots and flashlights, but they don't.
I didn't know for 48 hours if my parents survived.
What we needed was information more than supplies.
I've just never felt so helpless in my life.
People were crazy. They were running in the store and just grabbing anything.
Prevention needs to be very specific to the area and the problem.
No one knew who was in charge. Supplies were coming in, but no one was coordinating who could pick them up.
These interviews, combined with desk research, helped us not only understand the problems that exist within the relief and recovery space, but also empathize with the challenges and deep emotions people have in some of life's most trying and crucial scenarios.
Throughout several days of synthesizing, we established 4 key insights. Top-down assistance is cumbersome. The survivors and experts we spoke with both agreed that bottom-up solutions felt more efficient than government and NGO responses due to local knowledge and proximity on the ground. We also heard stories of people self-organizing labor in their own communities in the days after a disaster to help provide faster relief. We learned from volunteers that relief is a system based on distribution, and organizations need to work very quickly to provide aid to as many people as possible. However, their only metric of success is whether or not supplies made it to the hands of people, even if the supplies are not what people need. When this happens, survivors feel ignored. There is a missing feedback loop perpetuating a system of often misaligned aid. Through our conversations with experts and observations in our research, we learned that resilience planning is strongest and most inclusive when it is well informed by a community's own citizens. With this in mind, we knew that whatever we designed needed to be informed at a local level. Survivors often don't know where to look for reliable and clear information to answer their questions, and sometimes they're not even sure what to look for. This doesn't only happen before a disaster, where clear information is vital to proper preparation, but also in the weeks after, where access to resources is vital for survival and recovery.
From these insights, we formed 3 criteria and began prototyping. People need to feel heard, relief must be swift and accurate, and quality information should be accessible to all. Keeping this in mind, we reframed the challenge. How might we create a feedback loop to make survivors' needs known and accessible to organizations and government? We prototyped 4 concepts to address this question, thinking about ways we could train volunteers, provide people the services they need, dispel misinformation, and help people build resilience. We tested these ideas with 6 people, survivors of diverse natural disasters and experts from United Nations, UNICEF, and the Puerto Rican government. Throughout this prototyping process, we learned more about the strengths of some of our ideas and opportunities for improvement. We iterated on our ideas through multiple rounds of testing and built upon our initial prototypes, trying to create the most value for people like Alex.
Our solution, Earshot, democratizes information for both those impacted by a natural disaster and for the organizations and governments that serve them. At the center of our solution is an AI-driven chatbot named Quinn. In the days leading up to a hurricane, Quinn lets Alex know if there's any potential danger in her area and provides suggestions for preparation or evacuation. In the days and weeks after the hurricane, Alex can ask Quinn where to refill a prescription, how to apply for federal aid, or which roads are closed around her. As all correspondence takes place, Quinn can answer all of these questions thanks to Earshot's robust database that is built by text messages from people like Alex. When we tested this with users, we learned that not all populations are comfortable with texting. Some people prefer to make phone calls and speak with other people directly. So we plan on partnering with non-emergency call centers like 211 and 311 to help field questions while feeding our database. By allowing Alex to use her phone for a text or a call, we're leveraging the existing technology and systems that she's already accustomed to, making this service as accessible as possible. With the latest efforts in post-disaster self-service recovery by cell phone providers, energy companies, and local governments, we believe that there's no better time than now to leverage SMS messaging and phone calls. Through World Economic Forum's partnerships with companies like AT&T and with Google's Project Loon, we expect restoration to exponentially improve in the years to come.
In the current system of aid, relief is distributed based on hypotheses and previous knowledge. While most organizations collect data about disasters, they rarely collect data from people experiencing disasters directly. Earshot's database uses machine learning from every message and phone call to create actionable insights for governments and organizations to deliver better, faster, and more accurate aid. Organizations will be able to use Earshot to both figure out what Alex and her neighbors need today and to predict what they may need if a scenario like this happens again in the future. Thanks to Earshot's ability to help organizations with predictive analytics, Alex won't have volunteers showing up with a mop and cleaning supplies that she doesn't need. Instead, there will be a plan for her to get access to medicine for her husband before a storm even starts, and volunteers ready to help with repairing her home after the disaster hits. The more Quinn engages with people, the more Earshot improves predictions, recommendations, and interventions in the future and assists with long-term resilience planning. We believe that anticipation rather than reaction needs to become the approach for relief efforts, building relief strategies directly from the voices of people experiencing disasters.
This map visualizes our business model, in which we serve as a convergence point for our users and partners. We define our users as anyone who texts or calls our service, looking for information and sharing their needs. Our partners include aid organizations and national and local government entities, in addition to any corporate partners who value helping their communities and protecting value chains. Earshot operates as a subscription-based nonprofit organization and receives funding from our partners in return for real, actionable insights. When we tested Earshot and its business model with people from worldwide relief organizations, the value it provided was clear. The two-way data flow between aid systems and survivors was immensely valuable, and having access to constantly updated data was necessary for emergency scenarios. To launch, it will be critical to establish partners who are invested in the potential of smarter relief and recovery and begin feeding existing data from these partners into our system. We will use this data to train our machine learning system and will form teams of engaged locals on the ground in our test regions. We will scale this to an international level within 3 to 5 years.
When completing this project, we found ourselves in the beginning stages of a global emergency. As we navigated our own information channels, we found ourselves in a sea of misinformation and rumors. The emotions we were experiencing were the same as the ones we heard in our interviews: fear, confusion, sometimes even helplessness. We didn't know what information was true as we prepared our homes and families for an uncertain future. While we can't perfectly predict every scenario, a solution like Earshot can provide the voice of clarity we need to calm panic and fear in the most uncertain times of our lives. So, how might we provide immediate relief for those impacted by natural disasters? Whether she's entering a hurricane or even a pandemic, Earshot will help Alex feel heard, get swift and accurate relief, and live in a world with quality information that's accessible to all.